Hey there, just a heads up, this episode of the Judo Science Podcast was created with help from AI. Some of the voices you'll hear are synthetic, but the ideas come from real research and real judo.
All right, welcome to another deep dive where we take what you're curious about and try to, kind of condense it down.
Yeah, go deep but not get lost.
Exactly.
We bring those insights right to the surface.
Perfect. And so today we are diving into the world of judo. And we also have this blog post called Biomechanics in Judo to kind of give us a little bit of a background.
A little bit of context and some common language that we can all use to understand these more complex concepts.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that we want to answer today is how does judo work, right? Because it's not just about strength.
It's really not. It's fascinating how technique can really overcome size and strength differences, which is why judo is so popular amongst, people of all shapes and sizes. And these sources dive deep into the science behind that.
So this blog post, Biomechanics in Judo, it starts off, by defining biomechanics,
right,
which is basically how our bodies move, right?
Yeah.
The forces that act upon them.
It's looking at movement, but through the lens of physics and engineering.
Okay, so we're taking physics and applying it to the human body.
Exactly.
In motion.
And that's particularly relevant in judo because you're talking about manipulating your body and your opponent's body through space. So understanding those forces and how they interact is absolutely crucial.
And it highlights how this knowledge, right, this biomechanics knowledge can be used in judo to refine techniques.
Absolutely.
To prevent injuries.
Yeah.
And even to understand how your opponent might move.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, imagine if you could predict your opponent's movements just by understanding their biomechanics. You'd be one step ahead.
Right, you'd be like Neo in the Matrix.
Exactly, dodging bullets. Well, not literally dodging bullets, but dodging throws in this case.
Yeah. Dodging throws. And I think what's really, really cool about this is the main idea of judo is achieving maximum effect with the least amount of effort.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency. It's not about brute force. It's about understanding how to use your body and your opponent's body to your advantage.
Right. So it's working smarter, not harder.
Precisely.
I like that. So the blog post goes into a lot of these biomechanical terms that I think are important for us to understand.
Yeah, it can seem a little bit like a foreign language at first, but once you grasp these basic concepts, it really unlocks the whole world of biomechanics.
So we've got acceleration, which is how quickly something changes its speed. So if you think about a car accelerating, it's going from 0 to 60. That's acceleration.
Exactly. And in judo, acceleration is everywhere. It's in the quick movements of your arms and legs. It's in the rotation of your body as you execute a throw. It's a fundamental part of generating force and momentum.
Makes sense. We've also got force, which is measured in newtons.
Right.
And force is basically like a push or a pull.
It's what gets things moving or stops them from moving.
So if I'm pushing against a wall, that's a force.
Absolutely. You're exerting a force on the wall, and the wall's exerting an equal and opposite force back on you.
So that's why I'm not going through the wall.
Precisely. That's Newton's third law of motion in action.
Okay, interesting. And then there's momentum, which is, I think this is a tricky one.
Yeah, momentum can be a little bit counterintuitive.
It's a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, it's basically a measure of how much motion something has, and it depends on two things. Its mass and its velocity. So a heavier object moving at the same speed as a lighter object will have more momentum.
Okay, so a bowling ball rolling down the lane has more momentum than, say, a tennis ball rolling at the same speed.
Exactly, because the bowling ball has more mass.
Okay.
Now, where it gets really interesting in judo is how you can manipulate momentum. You can use your opponent's momentum against them.
Okay, we're going to get to that. But also, there's impulse.
Right.
And I think that impulse is a really an important one to understand.
It is, because impulse really gets at the heart of how judo throws work.
Yeah.
So think of impulse as the total effect of a force acting over a period of time. A large force applied briefly can create the same change in momentum as a smaller force applied for a longer duration.
Okay, so it's not just about how strong you are, but also how long you apply that force for.
Exactly. And that's why technique in judo is so important. It's about applying the right amount of force in the right direction for the right amount of time to effectively manipulate your opponent's momentum.
I'm starting to see how all this ties together.
It's all connected. It's like a puzzle, and we're putting the pieces together.
So we've got these basic concepts, but we've also got these more, more spatial terms, I guess you would say.
Yeah, terms that describe how we move through space and the different directions of movement.
So there's the center of gravity and the center of mass.
Right. And they're often used interchangeably. It's basically that point where an object's weight is evenly distributed.
Okay. So like if I'm standing up straight, my center of gravity is probably somewhere in my torso.
Yeah, probably around your belly button area.
Okay. And then if I lean forward, my center of gravity shifts.
Exactly. It moves forward as you lean forward. And in judo, manipulating your opponent's center of gravity is essential for breaking their balance and setting up a throw.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here. And then there's this idea of levers.
Right. Levers are simple machines that give us a mechanical advantage. They're basically rigid bars that pivot around a point.
Okay, so like a seesaw is a lever.
Exactly. The seesaw pivots around the fulcrum in the middle. Okay. And in judo, your limbs act as levers. So when you're applying force to your opponent, you're using your arms and legs as levers to amplify that force and create movement.
So it's like I'm using my body as a system of levers and pulleys.
In a way, yes. You're using the principles of leverage to your advantage.
Wow. And then to describe the direction of these movements, we use axes and planes.
Right. So you've got the anteposterior axis, which is basically the forward and backward direction.
Okay.
And movement along that axis happens within the sagittal plane. Imagine slicing your body in half from front to back. That's the sagittal plane.
Okay, picturing it.
Then you've got the vertical axis, which is up and down.
Okay.
And movement along that axis happens within the frontal plane, which is like slicing your body in half from side to side.
Okay.
And finally, you've got the medial-lateral axis, which is side to side.
Okay.
And movement along that axis happens within the transverse plane, which is like slicing your body in half horizontally.
Wow, so we're thinking about movement in 3 dimensions now.
Exactly. And having this vocabulary allows us to precisely analyze the complexities of judo techniques. It's a bit like having a map to navigate the movements of the body.
Right. And all of this ties back to the judo concept of the perfect throw. It's described as feeling almost effortless.
Yeah, like you're not even trying.
And requiring minimal energy.
Right.
And from a biomechanical and physics perspective, that makes perfect sense.
It does. It's all about maximizing efficiency, using your opponent's momentum and your own body mechanics to create the throw.
So for you, the learner, the key takeaway from this deep dive is that judo is not just about brute strength.
It's about so much more than that.
It's about understanding and applying these fundamental principles of biomechanics and physics.
It's about using your brain as much as your brawn.
Right. And by mastering these principles, you can become a more effective judo practitioner, regardless of your size or strength.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of judo.
And it leaves us with this final thought to consider.
Okay.
How might these principles of balance, momentum, and leverage apply in other areas of your life beyond the judo mat?
Interesting question.
Right. I mean, we're talking about principles of efficiency, strategy, using your opponent's force against them.
It makes you wonder if these principles could be applied to other challenges we face in life.
Absolutely. Maybe there's a way to kuzushi our problems, to use their momentum against them.
It's definitely something to think about.
So if you're curious to explore this further, we encourage you to do your own deep dive.
Absolutely.
And if you have any source material that you'd like us to explore, please send it our way.
We're always looking for new challenges.
Until our next deep dive, keep questioning, keep learning.
And thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Next time on the Science of Judo podcast, Episode 1, The Science of Elite Judo, a Rapid Overview.